Okay, we want to thank you all for joining our Blue Courage webinar today. Our topic is highlighting our heroes inside the walls. And in honor of National Corrections Officers Week, we'd like to welcome Erwin, Tyler Graham, and Ian Edwards. And I will turn it over to Ian to get us started.
Yeah, thank you so much, Becky. I'm really excited to be here with especially these two guys. I'll dive into who these two are in a minute, but these two are absolute mentors for me. I'm Assistant Commander Ian Edwards, work at the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission. This is our police academy in Washington State, and oversee corrections training for county and city jails. And I had the honor to bring these two gentlemen in with me, also both Blue Courage instructors, but I've been able to learn under Captain Erwin for the last over a decade now. We were talking about it the other day, and he is he used to oversee all the corrections training out here. He is a leadership instructor for almost every leadership course in Washington State. For policing that we do. He is a CIT instructor, teaches around the state CIT as well as at the college level. He's incredibly involved in that. He is a nationally recognized corrections instructor through receiving an Instructor of the Year through the American Jail Association. Just an honor to have him here with us, and he's put up with me for a really long time. So I really appreciate him being here and his wisdom.
Well, thank you, Ian, for that great introduction. And you know, being in this career field as a leader, it's not really about me. And sometimes you think about those things, especially in these trying times with the pandemic, you know, and COVID going through. And Blue Courage has definitely helped with us coping through that. Some of those things that kind of help that we'll talk about today.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And we're not going to hold it against you right now, but you are also a Marine.
As you can see in the background, right?
We've also got Sergeant Tyler Graham. He is from the Thurston County Jail, and his jail is one of the bigger jails here in Washington State at the county level. And Tyler has been in corrections for I would say, really counting his military service, he's been in over 20 years. He started working detention in the Army, and you know, did his time in Guantanamo Bay, and has been at the county level for going on a decade and a half now. He is, I love having these conversations and including Tyler Graham in this, because he is also a warrior through and through. He does a lot of he's a firearms instructor, taser instructor. He's doing defensive tactics, and he's really he pursues the skill of the warrior, but really truly understands the heart of the guardian. So I will throw this out there. He's also nationally recognized and received the American Correctional Association's Instructor of the Year. So both of these guys are just heavyweights, and I'm humbled to be in their presence. So so glad you could be on with us as well, Tyler.
It's a real honor to be here, and I really feel real strong connection with all of our brothers and sisters who are working right now and dealing with this unique challenge that we have in front of us with the pandemic. And really some of the things that they're facing now really speak to the true nobility of our career. Not just the unique aspect of care and custody that, you know, jail and prison officers have, but also some of the challenges faced with the way that as communities we're dealing with this differently, and some of the different types of arrests that they're seeing and different personalities that our officers are dealing with are going to be really a challenge unique to this generation and this group that's in the field right now. So yeah, it's a real honor to be here, and I appreciate it.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up. You know, as we dive into this idea of really celebrating the heroes inside the wall, At the end of this week, where we actually pause, we take a pattern interrupt in our year to say there are men and women who are truly unsung heroes within our community that sometimes get overlooked. And we start to point out the fact that there are a few brave men and women who venture inside the walls every day into this incredibly complex and misunderstood field where they're literally immersed in an inmate population. They're literally surrounded, sometimes in pure chaos, and de-escalating aggressive behavior and counseling suicidal inmates or first responders to medical emergencies. And I just think it's such a unique and amazing field. It's so great that we have an opportunity to really celebrate these heroes, and one of the things I was thinking about earlier is the fact that I guarantee every CO that sees this video has heard in their career, there's no way I could do what you do. And I guarantee that every single non-CO that watches this video says, yeah, there's no way I could do what they do, right? It's crazy. And I love that you brought up the shift in time. So I'm curious, one of the things that really sticks out to me is COs are so used to walking into a potential threat that they can see, but for the first time really magnified, they're walking into a potential unseen threat with the current pandemic going on. What have you guys seen as some of the things that are that we're facing right now? I'd love to start with you, Captain Erwin. You work at a large independent jail that's multiple municipalities, multiple contract cities. What are you seeing inside the walls?
I think one of the things for the corrections career field is we've always had to kind of address whatever took place out in society, whether it's a case law change and some of those things we know about ahead of time, but corrections has always had to deal with, whether it's the H1N1 from a couple of years back, SARS, or even back in the 80s with early corrections officers when HIV and AIDS came about. Yeah. So they've always had to make these changes and these adaptations to the career field. This is very unprecedented to us at a huge level, definitely affecting the entire planet. One of the biggest changes I think I've seen is an increase in humanity with coworkers and corrections officers, not just for their coworkers and the officers that they work with, but because people detain here and inmates. Now they're going to have a higher anxiety, what's going on? I don't want to get COVID while I'm in jail. And I've seen an increase in patient and the empathetic standpoint or conversations that they're having. Because there's a huge increase in anxiety, with the people detained here. These things, when they're locked up, are out of their control. We're responsible for when they eat and shower and those things and communicating with the outside world. So I'm very impressed with what I've seen from the professionalism that the corrections officers are displaying with people detained here. Very professional. I'm awestruck, and I'm looking at this COVID thing and thinking about all these things, but as corrections and Corrections Officer Appreciation Week that was established by President Reagan, they're just stepping up, maintaining professionalism, coming in behind the walls and taking care of business.
Yeah. I love that you really brought up the fact that there is an underlying anxiety across the board that we're not used to being exposed to. And you saw just recently in Washington State, at the state level, our Department of Corrections just had a major riot, over 200 inmates, and their staff were so incredibly professional and proficient. Not a single officer or inmate was injured in that encounter. So I really, it speaks to that level of anxiety really at a peak right now. Sergeant Graham, what are you seeing as some of the challenges?
Well, I think that a lot of the challenges are the scope, not necessarily the vectors themselves. And what I mean is, in corrections, we've always recognized the risk of things like tuberculosis. And I think with Captain Erwin specifically talking about, in the past, concerns with HIV or hepatitis, whatever that is, and that basic human need for hygiene that officers have to meet to maintain their living facilities I had a really good conversation with one of my coworkers at the jail, and she was talking about some of the challenges that she's facing. And one thing that really stuck out to me that kind of goes along with what you were saying, Captain, is, she was pointing out that, as long as I have been empowering the people that are in our custody to take control of those few things that they can, making sure they have the cleaning equipment that they need, making sure that they know that we'll keep that stuff flowing, and that we're giving them good processes that can keep them as healthy as possible, they've gotten good responses. There's always that underlying anxiety of any person when you start taking away their control, right?
Yeah.
When folks are in our custody, they have very little control. And so that really stuck out to me, because as she was talking about that, you could see the compassion and the value that she had over that role of making sure that people get through this while they're dealing with whatever their legal issue is and transitioning through their time in jail. So I definitely saw that in our officers, and it was really inspiring to me.
Yeah, that's a really good point to bring up, that how people are evolving as well in our profession with that. One of the things that I've seen, within Washington State, we've seen so many of our local agencies just band together, share resources, share ideas. And then nationally, we've seen people reach out and say, what are you guys in Washington doing? And so we've, from across the nation, had people reaching out. And I love that for the first time, we're really networking in a new way. Captain Erwin, what are you seeing that really just inspires you about how we are evolving as a profession?
Again, I think the type or refer to some things that Tyler said. It's the compassion. Even when people are coming here and they're detained, they're locked up, but showing that compassion component. Especially, I know I can speak for my jail facility because of COVID. We've had a reduction in inmate detainee jail population by 50%, nearly 50%. With that, there are some financial things that the bosses and the administration has had to do with some furloughs. And doing that, there are some senior officers, instead of taking the furlough, they go, or they took the furlough instead of junior officers taking it. This person's young, they have a family, they have bills. I'm a senior officer, I'm kind of established, my kids aren't at home, but I can go ahead and afford to take the furlough while you're working. And I'm just very impressed with that, as a profession, as people looking out for one another, their brothers and sisters in the corrections career field, and doing so and making those sacrifices. And then constantly using that positive psychology when they're coming in. Hey, it could be worse. This is going to get better. Have positive thoughts, what we can do, and focus on the things that we can control. So I'm very impressed with that.
Nice. Sergeant Graham, any additional inspirations that you've seen?
No, I think that the important component here too that we can't overlook when we talk about this subject specifically is that just recognizing that our officers' perspective or their view on the type of care that the people in custody have really impact our officers' health as well. And by seeing some of the ways that our officers are navigating through this, it's given me, kind of a little bit of an insight into their perspective on the type of care that's being provided to the people who are in our custody, and how they're dealing with that. And like I said, the other side of that is, you see these stories in the news, not so much where we're at, but we see these stories in the news of people getting arrested over, these civil infractions or violations and coming into the jail. And I'm not hearing, and maybe it's because I haven't looked hard enough, or maybe I'm missing them, but I'm not hearing a lot of tales from those folks about, inequities or poor practices. So that's telling me from that, or at least I hope that we're seeing officers recognize that this is difficult for these people going through this process. They're probably frustrated too. And just like Captain Erwin was saying, they're listening, they're being empathetic. That's huge.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So I'm really curious, because I know you guys, we've worked together for a while now, and Um, you're both incredibly positive. You serve as a light to those who come in contact with you. I'm curious, what advice would you give on how to combat some of the things that we're experiencing now with the unknowns, you know, the new unknowns, not just the ones that we've become accustomed to. I'd love to know, Captain Erwin, what advice you would give to somebody that's inside the walls right now?
And I try to model and live whether I'm at home or at work, I'm the same person. And one of the things I pride myself on is having a pretty good sense of humor. I may think I'm funny myself and others may not, but I would tell people in advice is don't change who you are. You know, this is something we can't control. We're dealing with it. We're managing it as a planet. Don't change who you are and still be true to those things that you value and you hold. Don't let this become you and change you. So for me, I try to keep my sense of humor as much as I can, and being open-minded and willing to accept change and those things that you know that are going to come. We know it's going to happen.
Yeah, great. Yeah, you are a funny man. Sergeant Graham, what are you doing to combat some of the anxieties?
So my favorite strategy, and I try to do this whenever I experience it, and I try to share this with other people, is on those days, and because we have them, those days when you're just feeling overwhelmed or frustrated, I try to find somebody who's doing something really well or doing something that really benefits the workplace or the people around me, and I try to tell them. And when I do that, not only do they hopefully feel that recognition, but it makes me feel a little bit better. It's got to be genuine, though. Even today, you know, using technology now more than ever, I mean, you know, we're in a people business. I'm a very people-focused person. It's killing me to have to manage things using technology this way, but just getting some support from our IT folks today, I wanted to make sure that I let them know, like, hey, what you're doing has a big impact on what I'm doing today. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that they recognize that, but that benefits me too. And so there's value in going through that process, as simple as that sounds or as silly as it sounds, and it does make a difference. And that's my favorite strategy. When I start to feel those feeling overwhelmed or getting frustrated, I try to find someone around that's just making that impact and tell them. Just tell them.
Yeah. You guys are both great at this. And I will also say that both of you are practitioners of the positive psychology challenge that, you know, we took away from Blue Courage, using gratitudes on a daily basis. Also random acts of kindness, some of the things that we have incorporated from those practices. And it does pay dividends in the moment. But I would also say, and neither of you will probably say this about yourself, but I know it to be true because I know you guys, you also do a lot of prep work. I know that you do practices before you walk into the chaos. And it's also something that I've found to be beneficial is putting yourself in the right frame of mind, doing some of the breathing techniques. You know, I've seen Blue Courage posting a lot of these webinars, and many of them are just filled with techniques, breathing techniques, resiliency techniques, emotional management. So there's so many things that I know, and you two as well are doing on a constant basis. So I know that prep work ahead of time is incredibly valuable. What resources are you guys using, or what do you recommend? What do you think would be a good resource if you could give, you know, one or two resources to COs that are in the field right now? Captain Erwin?
I echo everything that Tyler said earlier about that positive. You know, I have this phrase. I mean, my philosophy is praise is free. It doesn't cost anything. Yep. If it makes someone feel better. And my philosophy is I go around and try to catch people doing things right. And I've used the breathing techniques, you know, when I'm reaching to the brink or kind of stressing out or whatever that may be, and kind of come back and kind of focus and use that praise and kind of interact with other people and and kind of find out what they're doing. But the big thing for me is I just reflect back as a young officer in this career field, and if I were going through some of those things, what would I want? What would I need? And I may not know that I need it. And to me, it's just coming back to those basic principles about that corrections culture, you know, from Blue Courage, and coming back to why you got into this profession and being professional and doing those things and providing those things to the younger officers. Because I have the other thing is, if I'm on the playground, sometimes I may not be able to see or identify what I need. So sometimes I need to get off the playground and take a look and see what their need may be on the playground. And so I think about that and try to at least provide whatever I think those officers are. And a lot of what Tyler does already, just going around and having conversations, giving out that praise, you know, what do you need? How are things going? What do you need from me? Sometimes I don't need anything. But when it comes up to those officers who do need something, they're going to come back to be ready to open that door and you know, set that foundation to have that conversation and dialogue. So for me, I think that's a huge resource, is that corrections culture, come back to that founding principle, why we do what we do, why we go behind the doors, you know, and come into the everyday, coming into work. People aren't calling out sick because of COVID. They're coming in work because they're expected to do for their coworkers.
I love it. So sacrificial.
Yeah, and I think for us too, I think they recognize the value in that being there, right? It's one of those things that, you know, when officers look to, hey, you know, I need to be there, they recognize the impact of, hey, people need to get their food. People need to get their medical attention. People need to get all those needs met during the day that those officers provide. And it's not only just looking at their coworkers, because they're thinking about the person to their left, they're thinking about the person to their right, but that spirit of service. And I think that's often underappreciated when people look to our work group, because corrections officers are very aware of that. And oftentimes they're the ones who step up for the members of the community that no one else will. And so I think a lot of our officers really recognize that. I mean, not to diminish the value that they put on the person to their left and right, because I know those officers are thinking about that, but a lot of those officers feel that spirit of service. They know the community is relying on them to be there. And we've seen that before. And Captain, I'm glad that you mentioned it. You know, historically, this has happened before, not this specifically, but these types of emergencies, these types of situations have come up, and there are tons of examples of officers being there and doing the right thing. And, you know, this generation, this group that's facing it, they're no different. Maybe on a larger scale, we'll kind of see where this goes. But, you know, I think that spirit of service is here with our officers, and we're seeing it with them every day.
Yeah.
I think for references for me, when it comes to practices and you know, sir, you know that I like to give myself that opportunity to take a few minutes and go through some of those breathing exercises at the beginning of the day. I think that has a huge impact. And one of the books that I think has made a big impact on me to help me get through that is Dan Harris's book. Because when it comes to the idea, you know, even in the 21-day challenge for meditation and understanding how to get through that process, for me, that was very difficult, right? I was like, meditation, like, I'm not doing that. That's not for me. Or you know, I'm not going to reach that. Right. And really getting a perspective from someone who not only has had that same struggle, but has had a different life experience than but looking to find the same place. And so that was his book was very impactful for me in recognizing the value there. And I think reading that and understanding it has helped me a lot. I mean, just the opportunity, and it's funny because even trying to explain it to people sometimes is difficult now as I'm still developing that practice, but just the ability to bring my awareness to bear when I need it is so valuable, whether it's getting ready to walk through a door for, you know, an emergency, or whether it's walking in to talk to someone in crisis, or whether it's going in to talk to one of my partners that needs my ear for a minute. Being able to take that breath and refocus is like an extra gear. It's like an extra tool in the toolbox. And being willing to explore that and go through that process has been huge for me. And I've seen it work for other officers too. And I think that one reference, his book has been huge for just getting to that point.
Yeah. You mentioned it quite a few times, Dan Harris. The book 10% Happier is what you're talking about, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Great resource for anyone who's listening to this. The last webinar I did, I mentioned that in times of crisis or times of change, I usually default back to as a man thinketh. And so I wanted to share a quote with the group today that just illustrates why this is so impactful for me. It gives us so many rich nuggets like this. Man is made or unmade by himself. In the armory of thought, he forges the weapons by which he destroys himself. He also fashions the tools with which he builds for himself heavenly mansions of joy and strength and peace. And I think that that's so incredibly profound. It's stuff like that feeding the mind, enriching the soul is actually what's getting me through some of this stuff. So as we wrap up here, I want to give both of you a minute, just if there's one message that you would give those inside the wall, what would it be, Captain Erwin?
I think it just comes back to me is just remember that emotional intelligence training. Remember that and that empathetic piece and look at it from someone else's perspective. And I think, to me, I think one of the things my go back to thing is book or whatever is the verbal judo. And when George Thompson talks about certain things in there and having that conversation, understanding with that conversation and dialogue, and when people are upset, inmates, detainees, coworkers, whomever, it's really not about at you or that task, that thing that took place. It's something else. They have that anxiety. They have that fear. They don't know what's going on. So just having those components and that thought process in mind is like, hey, they're not directing this at me. Don't take it personal, but let's find out and how can I help this person, this individual out, whoever that may be, at this moment in their mind or their life when they're going through this thing, because this is really a national crisis.
Yeah. I appreciate your thoughts. Sergeant Graham, words for those inside the walls?
Well, I will everyone who knows me knows I tell every officer that I get a chance to interact with this because I think it's that important. We have the unique opportunity to interact with people on what is probably one of the worst days of their life. And so that is an amazing opportunity and it's immense responsibility. So, just remember that what you do is so immensely important. In those moments, you are so valuable, just as a role model, as a professional, and as a resource for your community. Just keep up that good work, and people are noticing. It may not seem like it to you, but we need you, and people are noticing. I wanted to make a quick administrative note too. In my background, I'm an instructor through Stuntronics, not Taser. Just to be specific, I don't want Taser.
Sorry about that, sir.
No, that's fine, sir.
I deviated from the script. I appreciate.
I just want you to remember that you are important. You're an important component to that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would just reiterate in this last little bit here as I bring this to a close. My respect runs so deep for those who have chosen this profession. Anyone in law enforcement, any of those on the front lines right now. I mean, our nurses are finally getting recognition they deserve. Those in our probation, our dispatchers, our law enforcement, our firefighters, so many people are giving everything to this. But to really close out this week, Corrections Week, I just want to give a heartfelt thanks and remind our brothers and sisters that they are heroes. They are superheroes, and just like most superheroes, they're only recognized while they're in the uniform. When they take that uniform off, their community doesn't know the great work they're doing behind the scenes. Nobody's running up to Clark Kent saying, "Thank you for saving the world," because they don't know. So many of you won't receive the thanks that you deserve, but the community benefits daily. Our democracy would absolutely crumble without you. So stay in it, and we're here to support you. And I'll turn this back over to Becky. Thank you so much, both of you, for being on here with me.
Thank you, all three of you. That was wonderful. And thank you for taking time out of your day to share your wisdom with all of us and being here. I want to remind everyone that this will be posted on Facebook and also on the Blue Courage on YouTube also. And the Blue Courage Facebook page, please feel free to leave any comments, any thoughts that you have afterwards. And you can also go to the Blue Courage website, and you can email us any questions or thoughts too at info@bluecourage.com. So thank you again all for being with us today, and have a safe and healthy weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.